Ladies and gentlemen, Diablo 4 Season 4 has introduced many great quality of life changes, so much so that a lot of these changes and updates seem to get overlooked. So I wanted to go over a little checklist for you to help avoid some mistakes you could be making and drop a few nuggets of information to make your life as smooth as possible in Season 4. Here we go. Number 1. You can transmute or convert all the larger resources that you gain from the pit to the lower ones at any alchemist, and they even reduce the cost for us when doing this. So because of this, tier 61 in the pit is going to be your new mark you're trying to reach. At tier 61 and up, you can farm the nether iron and the ingot, which can be turned into the lower ones, which then can be transmuted again to even lower ones. So make 61 your goal when it comes to the pit. Number 2, the maximum armor cap is sitting at 9,230. If your character has any more than that, it's a waste. Next patch, they're going to be addressing this and it's going to be shown in the stats, but no more or no less than 9,230. Number 3, the best way to upgrade your gear right after hitting the next world tier, so from world tier 2 to 3 and then from 3 to 4, is through the obal vendor. This is going to be dropping gear that correlates from the tier that you're in. So because of this, right after you hit world tier 3, you can use your obals to get sacred gear, and once again once you hit world tier 4, you can use your obals to go get ancestral gear. This will be the fastest way to gear up directly after jumping into a new world tier, and it's going to help you go out into those Helltides or whatever it is you're doing to get your legendaries and better gear from that. Number 4. Now this next one may be a little bit more obvious, but it just has to be mentioned because it's that important. Tempering. Temper, people. If you're not tempering your items frequently, you're kind of doing it wrong. These are going to be the 2 additional stats you're able to apply to your gear at any blacksmith. And this is where all your damage is coming from. You're looking at things like 150% increased damage to close enemies, far enemies. I mean, the list goes on. Go check out your tempering manuals if you haven't already. But as of right now, gold is the issue, not materials. A matter of fact, you're probably going to end up with so much materials you won't even need to keep salvaging. And you're just going to get to the point where you need to sell everything instead. And tempering only takes materials with a 0 gold cost. So just to be more specific, I'm talking about tempering starting in world tier 2 before you go into the capstone dungeon. For your first set of gear in world tier 3, temper again. Walking into world tier 4, go again. And any replacements from there, I think you get the point. Go temper. Don't skip this, it's super important. Number 5. The next tip I wanted to talk about is essentially a self-made loot filter. So here's what I do to make clearing your inventory a very quick and efficient process while still keeping the materials and the Codex of Power upgrades in mind. So say you just finished up with the Nightmare Dungeon and we're about to empty our inventory. The first thing you should do is run over to the vendor, not the blacksmith, a vendor. And now when you're looking at your inventory, here are the 3 things you need to be on the lookout for. First, be on the lookout for one of these white X's or cross sorting icons. I don't know what this is, but be on the lookout for this, as this means it's a specific piece of gear that needs to be upgraded to your Codex of Power. So you now know this is an item that needs to be salvaged. Always look to keep updating your Codex. The second thing to be on the lookout for is this little red star. This lets us know we have an item with the greater affix on it, and at the very least it should be looked at and compared to the gear you currently have. And me personally, I would also keep these items. There's absolutely no downside right now to holding these, even if it's for another class you might make later on down the line. Fill your stash space with these greater affix items first, then when you start running out of space, go through the stash and get rid of what you don't need. And the third thing to be on the lookout for is the grayish silvery background, as this indicates a unique item and this should be saved until you have a decent amount to go through. Everything else needs to be sold. We need gold. Oh, but you got 1,000,000 gold. You broke, because you still can't even fully masterwork one character, and that's without thinking about any rerolls. So quick recap. 1. Look for the white swords with the items on it to salvage. 2. The red star is your greater affix and you should either compare to your gear that you currently have or keep. And number 3 is the silver or the gray background, as this means you have a unique. Hold on to these until you have a nice selection of them to go through, and you're good to sell everything else. And do me a big favor, consider hitting that like button, subscribe, ring the notification bell, all that jazz. If you're enjoying this video, it helps me out so big. Thank you guys. Number 6. Here's a few quick Helltide tips. The new Iron Wolf reputation system is tied heavily with Helltide. So as you progress through the Iron Wolf system, make sure you keep going back to get these rewards as soon as possible. They're not scaling with your level and they're not going to be any more useful later on than they would be right now. And when you get these rewards in the early stages of your playthrough, they're going to help you level even faster because they're going to reward you with resources and potions that will boost your XP. And without these items, your progress will be much much slower, don't wait on these. And since we mentioned leveling, do consider tempering speed increases to a lot, if not most of your gear while leveling. Being as fast as possible is only going to help you in the long run while you're running around Helltide trying to get as much XP as you can. The next thing that I gotta mention is the Helltide chests. These you do want to hold off on. These chests do scale with your level, so if you walk in at level 10 with a 40-minute timer for Helltide and you wait till you have like 5 minutes left and gained like a boatload of levels, you're gonna gain way more XP if you open these Helltide chests as late as possible. Just don't wait too long and lose your Helltide cinders. Number 7. Up next, we got a nice little side tip. Just be aware of the Codex of Power costs. It's no joke. When you go to imprint your gear, you can find yourself spending upwards of 600,000 gold, which is an absolute absurd price to pay. So when you're using the Codex of Power, be very aware of how frequently you're doing this. It better be a pretty sizable upgrade and really warrant that swap of an aspect, since gold is pretty scarce. Don't just be whipping these out willy-nilly on every piece of gear and little upgrade you find. But that's just my opinion, you do you. Number 8. Next on the list, this is going to give you a huge impact in damage and experience, and it's the new craftable elixirs in Season 4. And there's 2 of them, but the main one you need to keep in your back pocket is the elixir of holy bolts, making it so after killing an enemy, holy bolts will fire from the corpse of that enemy, and this thing absolutely destroys everything. So you should really try to keep these on as much as you can, especially while leveling. And the other one is the elixir of momentum. Now you can find these while you're out and about in the world, or you can also craft them for 350 obals. But either way, keep these in stock as best as you can while you're leveling. You will absolutely feel the difference. Number 9. If you're between the levels 20 and 50, you can create something called the allowance cache at the alchemist. This is going to allow you to create legendary aspects at random. So because of this, if you're in between those levels, whether you're leveling an alt or it's your first character, you can go pick these allowance caches up, and this will allow you to farm legendaries very quickly to achieve the right aspect you might be looking for. Again, this is only going to be available if your character is between level 20 and level 50. I hope you guys learned something and at least came away with one new piece of information that you didn't know before. And if there's anything you'd like to add, by all means leave it down in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe, ring the notification bell, all that jazz, and I'll see you in the next one. Toodles!